First, I would analyze what player I'm going to play against and what specifically he has played recently.
You have to try to predict what your opponent's playing, like even if you only know their class.
And then I would think what is the best in the meta right now and how could I try to rebuild my decks and just aim for that.
If you get that phase sorted, like for example, if you're playing like Handlock versus like Hunter, which is unfavored for you, have to make it so that you get the best start you can. So in the mulligan stage, you might want to like keep like Mortal Coils and your early game cards such as like Zombie Chows against that matchup. There are many other examples, but basically I think the mulligan stage is very vital in winning a game.
The best early game is probably the aggressive decks because they got really many low minions, so it's really consistent to get a board control. For example, the new Sychry, it's like there's really many one-drops and there's secrets, and secrets is tempos like buffing your minions, and it's really hard to deal with.
I would recommend the new beginners to start with Hunter because Hunter is quite the easiest class or mage and to begin with because it's aggressive and you don't have to think so many possible strategies to win against your opponent. You just go face.
For an aggro deck, I'd say you have to be playing like the Leper Gnomes, the cards that are really aggressive and control the board really well, like Leper Gnomes, and then like some class-specific cards, I guess, that you want to put in decks are shielded mini bots, and then like Haunted Creepers are really good, they're really sticky minions to contest the board early on. Just basically a lot of cards that are really strong, and they can't be dealt with early on.
Welcome back, guys, to the Gfinity Arena, live from London for the Gfinity Summer Masters 2 Championship Sunday. So a little video there getting you an insight into playing aggressively, which we did see in the last game. We saw Green Sheep, of course, try with the aggro paladin. And we saw a little bit of aggression from the Hunter of Hoy as well.
Yeah, well, definitely. And when something doesn't have taunt, you go face, right? That's how we do it.
That's what that video taught me.
Yeah. Well, back to business, guys. We have our second semi-final coming up. It's going to be Sychry versus Faeli. We haven't quite decided how we're saying his name yet, but let's try and avoid Faeli, I think, possibly, because that sounds a bit like we're maybe presupposing what's going to happen here.
Yeah, hopefully that won't happen today.
Absolutely. But yeah, Sychry played very well yesterday. Probably one of the surprise of the day, right? The surprise package going 2-0 in his group, winning that group ahead of Green Sheep, beating Green Sheep in that crazy series that Green Sheep really did kind of throw away there. But Sychry kind of snatching victory from the jaws of defeat and advancing to our semi-final here.
Yeah, and he has a unique playstyle, I would say, when you compare him to other competitors here in this tournament, because he only plays control and mid-range decks. Like, he has no aggro decks, and he said he resents them. So that's a bold statement, I would say, and maybe he's saying that because he wants to put an advantage to the next tournament, because he will actually switch to aggro decks, like to make some mind games here. But at the same time, we see him playing here Control Warrior, Secret Paladin, if I recall correctly, and the mid-range Druid. And on the other hand, we have Faeli, who's playing Patron, Druid, and mid-range Paladin. So the odds are really even here.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask you, Monk, sorry, is obviously looking at the matchups here, we have two warriors. We have warrior, druid, paladin on both sides, but we have the warrior archetypes and the paladin archetypes matching up. What do you think of those two matchups specifically?
I think Sychry is going to really regret bringing Control Warrior to this tournament. He's actually already talked to me, and he said, probably shouldn't have brought this deck, because mid-range Paladin that a lot of players are bringing this tournament is really, really good against Control Warrior. Yeah, definitely. Even in Blackrock Mountain, it was around like 85%. And with the addition of Murloc Knight, I feel like that just adds more fuel to the fire.
Yep. Yeah, that's been the deck of the tournament really so far. I would say mid-range Paladin, the big surprise that we didn't think people would bring. We thought Secret in would be the big deck, but it's just classic mid-range Paladin. Well,
it really depends on what you mean by the deck of the tournament. And when you say like the deck of the tournament, if you mean that it's brought a lot of people have brought that deck, then yes. But it's also the deck that's failed the most.
Yeah, that's true.
That's very true. Well, we'll see if it is going to fail for Faeli. The players are in the booth. Sychry and Faeli. Sychry in the red booth and Faeli in the blue booth. Sychry very tall. I noticed, and I'm trying to be nice about it. I don't want to be too mean about him because, frankly, he terrifies me. He's a giant of a man. But we do have two players here from the Czech Republic, guaranteed Czech representative in the final, like we talked about. These guys are playing, I guess, for national pride a little bit, Lothar.
Yeah, it's like even if you're from the same country, I think both of the players have like a competition that is not being said, but they both feel like, okay, I have to show the viewers I'm the better Czech, I'm the better Polish player, I'm the better German player, or whatever.
Yeah.
What's your nationality? If both players from the same nationality are battling against each other, I think there's always a little competition, even if they are like friends or whatever.
Yeah, you don't want to come all the way. You don't want to travel across the world and then get beaten by somebody who was in your backyard the whole time.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Monk, what do you make of the national pride aspect of Hearthstone? Obviously, it's an international tournament. Players have come from all over the world, but there's this interesting national battle just between these two from the same country.
I don't know. I don't think it's like that much hype necessarily. I mean, some countries like France, for example, they have a very insular community. They practice with each other a lot. I'm not sure if that's the case with the Czech Republic. It might just be like they speak the same language, but beyond that, they might not have as many similarities.
It's interesting, though, because being around the players this weekend, I did notice that immediately, because these two are both from the Czech Republic, they kind of gravitated towards each other a little bit. We're chatting a lot, they were hanging out, they were talking about the game yesterday, and then suddenly they've kind of ended up facing each other. So that's part of the aspect, and that is part of what we talked about yesterday of the LAN environment, is seeing the players, getting to know the players as people. You can't just shut it off and pretend it's a black box. Mm-hmm. You do actually have to get to know them as people and match them up on that level.
Yep.
Yeah. We're actually seeing the first matchup of this match, and it's going to be the dreaded Control Warrior versus Mid-Range Paladin. That just means that Faeli has a huge advantage going into this match.
Yeah, especially if the Murloc Knight will go Patron mode and will be cloning himself.
But to be fair, with the Conquest format, because you can only win once with each deck, is this maybe a good move from Sychry to just tank the loss from the Mid-Range Paladin, get it out the way, and then maybe he feels like he has a better chance against the other two decks in Faeli's lineup, Lothar?
Well, when you think about Conquest, you're right. You have to win with every single deck. But at the same time, when you have advantage, even with only one matchup, it puts you ahead. And in this situation, the Mid-Range Paladin has an advantage over the Control Warrior. The Mid-Range Druid has an advantage over Control Warrior, right? And then you have the Patron, which is well, you can say this is a disadvantage against Control Warrior, but it has advantage against Druid and the Secret Paladin. So maybe I was wrong with the prediction. I would say maybe actually Sychry has a really his chances of winning this game are really less than I predicted in the first place.
I think like you mentioned that Sychry's Control Warrior is unfavored, really unfavored against two of the decks. I think he just really wanted to like hope to get that Patron Warrior, hope that Faeli queued up with that Patron Warrior first, get a win off that Control Warrior, and then just wipe the sweat off his face.
That might have been the plan, and it failed.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit in previous matches, but when you do go 1-0 down, that second game in the series is often the most crucial, because if you can jump out to a 2-0 lead, it means you get 3 chances to win with one deck, and particularly something like Druid. 1 game out of 3, Druid is going to draw like a Druid and just steamroll a game, particularly against unfavored matchups. Well, let's get predictions from you guys. Who do you think is going to take it?
I would like to see Sychry taking it because he's unfavored in this matchup.
Monk, what are you going for?
Well, it's not about who we want to see advance. It's about who we think will advance. And just judging from that first matchup, Mid-Range Paladin against Control Warrior, I think Faeli has a huge advantage.
Well, Monk playing the stats. Lothar going with the heart there.
Yeah.
What do you guys think? Get on Twitter, get on Twitch. Let us know on the social media who you think is going to win this match. It's going to be a really interesting one. Of course, one of these guys is going to the grand final to meet Hoy. Way to bring in this match. It's Nimsh and Raven.
Thank you so much, Callum. Oh man, Raven. We have the Czech brothers, Sychry and Faeli. Who is going to win?
I think even though with the unfavored matchup for the start, I think Sychry can take it. Yesterday we saw really solid play, probably just under Hoy in terms of how solid. But we saw Faeli that had some issues with some of his games a little bit, maybe a few misplays, a bit of cracking under the pressure. But Sychry played really solid, and I was speaking to him yesterday, and he just seems he's so laid back and just so happy to be here that he
really
might
relaxed.
The pressure that he's not feeling as much might actually really help him in this matchup.
Well, on the other hand, I will have to go with Faeli because Faeli has a lot of experience from Warcraft card game, and he was traveling around the world. Right now, he had a different experience yesterday because playing in a booth, esports, it's different. It's you are in solitude. There are not many people next to you, but he is growing as a player because he had that experience yesterday. I have really high hopes for him today that he grew as a player and he now can control his emotions and play better.
Yeah, that could, as long as he can understand what happened yesterday, and then, like you said, build on that and be like, right, I know what not to do now, and then I'll try and perform better today. I think it could really go either way. And as the guys mentioned, the matchup isn't really looking at Sychry's way at this point.
All right, so game number 1 starting, Sychry versus Faeli, the dreaded Control Warrior. Can it snatch that win that Sychry absolutely needs?
So looking at it, just going to keep hold of Acolyte of Pain, which is pretty reasonable considering all the other cards he had. And it looks like the Paladin's going to just throw away everything. And Bash, what do you think of Bash, actually?
I like the card.
Yeah.
It's a good removal card. It's also a huge life swing. But I'm not sure how good it is in this specific situation. What I really like about it is that you can kill a Pilot Shredder and gain some armor in the process.
Yeah, and sorry, we can just see the guys doing the little hellos there with the emotes and just laughing away in the booth. So that's quite nice, and it seems quite laid back at this moment in time anyway.
Absolutely. They are having fun. They are sharing the room, and they were hanging out together as well. As I mentioned, Czech brothers. When you're from the same country, it's a bit different. You can always relate to a different person, and then they play Hearthstone as well. They are not from the same team, but maybe they went to the same school or something, Yeah,
and we just saw the Well Played come out for that hero power for the Paladin on turn 2, so it's quite fun. And double Brawl in this Warrior deck. That's going to be pretty useful, actually, if the Paladin builds up the board and then plays the Quartermaster we can see that he's holding, especially with double Muster in hand. That must be the game plan, at least at the moment.
Absolutely. That's one of the strategies you can have as Paladin. Just get those minions on the board, hope there is no Brawl, no Whirlwind, and just slam the Quartermaster. But the analyst mentioned that this matchup is really hard for the Warrior. What Warrior has to do to actually win?
Yeah, I think just keep it on top of the board because other than Brawl, there's not a lot. It's not like you're playing against Patron where a big board can actually work in your favor because you can just kill someone because of it. But if the Quartermaster gets built up and he can't answer it, luckily with 2 Brawls, it's as good a start as he's going to get to a certain extent because at least he has one, and not a lot of people play around the second one, and you almost can't afford to play around the second one because if you do and it never happens, then you probably just lose because of that. Other than that, it's just a tough one. He just needs to not let the board build up too much and sort of generate the board of his own with Shield Maidens and probably Belchers and things like that.
All right. Do we know if he's playing Varian?
I think he is. I'm sure he is. I'm sure we saw it yesterday.
Okay, so for Faeli here, he can't really deal with the Acolyte of Pain. He had Equality, but just using Equality to deny card draw is not the best move. This means that Sychry will be able to draw at least 2 cards from the Acolyte. And his hand doesn't look great. Except for the Brawls, as you mentioned.
Yeah, it's like he has answers to things, but nothing to actually do proactively himself. But I suppose, as the controller, that's not too terrible. It's just that you're not facing an aggro deck, so the game will go on.
Absolutely. The fact that he has the Acolyte of Pain is actually amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else can you do? Do you just... he's looking at Brawl.
Bash face?
You might just Hero Power Pass. But I like the fact that he is trying the cards, so this small mind games here, and showing that he might maybe have a play that he don't want to use here.
This is a bit of an interesting turn here, because Murloc Knight is never normally played on turn 4, unless you've got so much tempo that you just drop it and say you've got this to deal with as well now. But with just the 3/1/1s, like Murloc Knight, you always want that value of at least hitting your hero power once with it, and you can't guarantee that, especially against a deck called the deck of Control Warrior, where it's built to answer cards. That's what the whole deck's built around. So equipping the True Silver's fine here. He guards the rest of his tokens, because next turn he has Quartermaster, and then suddenly that's going to demand a Brawl. It'll get brawled, and then he can actually go into the Murloc Knight hero power then. So he does have a bit of a plan forming.
Absolutely. I would not play the Murloc Knight there because of the Death Spite, so I'll be afraid that it can happen. Alright, so Sychry's hand is bigger and bigger with all the interesting cards. He gets the shield block as well. So what's the play here? He might just shield block and pass again.
I think he just has to. Just cycle, because again, bashing a 1/1's not great, and there's nothing else to do at the moment because he's not got the mana. But he does have the Brawl, and then he does have a Shield Maiden to follow up with. And then straight into Boom, Ragnarok. So he's not sort of been a bit lackluster in the early game. The Acolyte was good, but his late game is pretty much covered already, with double Execute as well in hand.
Yeah, even though Faeli was able to sneak in some damage, he's still at 23. So Sychry, is that the first Brawl? I think that's a very valid Brawl board.
Yeah, I mean, and what you've got to look at, if he doesn't Brawl, he has Bash hero power to do, which Bash Shield Slam is actually reasonable, because you can clear 2 of the 3/3s. But you're still leaving minions on the board, and then the Paladin's on turn 6, you'd imagine has got like maybe Shredder or the Murloc Knight or even the Tuskar Jouster that we can actually see. So there's a lot of options where the Control Warrior, if you don't use Brawl now, are you really going to use both in the game? You might just fall too far behind.
Yeah, but absolutely, Sychry is also thinking about other plays and other turns, because if you brawl now, one of the minions is going to survive, it's going to deal damage, you start at the weapon. So technically you're at 19, you will not armor up this turn. Free damage from minion that puts you on 16. And then what do you do on 6? You might Shield Maiden to get a minion again and some armor, but you will not be able to slam.
Yep.
So Sychry actually finds a different solution.
I think what I might plan to do is let the Paladin do whatever he's going to do this turn, play the Shield Maiden, and hope the Paladin wants to trade, as opposed to just, has enough tempo to just go for it and finish the game.
What do you think in the end about Shield Slam and Bash? Was that better, really? He killed 2 minions only, so he's getting even more damage.
Yeah, I don't know. I think with the weapon down, you need to just reduce the board as much as you can, and with the True Silver already there, because it just makes trading so much more easier. And because he's got 2 brawls, again, he's just about to go into Shield Maiden, Dr. Boom, and Rag potentially as a good curve. But if he didn't brawl then like, is he ever going to play them both or even one?
Oh man!
And there's the old Murkai.
Yeah,
not terrible.
Murloc with charge, so even more damage into Sychry's face.
So now we're almost certainly going to see brawl, right?
Yeah, well, 5 minions on board, you have to brawl.
And plus the Murkai is guaranteed to gain +1 damage at least from generating another Murloc next turn.
The problem though is, if the Murloc Knight survives, he's going to generate even more and more minions.
Yeah. You just hope for the 1/1, right?
Yeah, you do hope for that.
Is there any way in which, I mean, he does have
5.
He does have Belcher, but I just don't think any of those will do enough at this point, especially because the Paladin's got the True Silver.
Okay, so
you
the
can
brawl
pretty
is
much clear
happening,
anything.
and 2-5.
That's reasonable.
That was really good for Sychry.
Yeah. Sychry's probably happy with that. What do you prefer here? There's the Tuskar Jouster, which the joust just doesn't matter anymore, or at least doesn't matter at this point. Or do you just drop Shredder just because it's a bit stickier and you continue sort of pressuring that way, even through removal?
I would expect from Warrior Shield Maiden and Shield Slam, but I've seen one Shield Slam already, so I'm fine with the Jouster, I feel. If I just go with the Shredder, doesn't do much, it's a bit less damage, but I would not hate Shredder. I think I'm keeping Elder Peacekeeper, so absolutely a hero power, and you have 5 mana left. So to use your mana effectively, Tuskar Jouster might be better.
Let me think.
It's not as if he's about to get Alex Strased next turn and he could have used the heal, right? So there's still a good chunk of time before anything like that can happen. He is going to go with the Shredder, though.
Shredder is also fine, obviously. It's just a really close decision between Shredder and Jouster. Yeah. With the Shredder, he's still using his mana really effectively. And for turn 8, he will be able to play Tuskar Jouster and Elder Peacekeeper if he needs to.
Or, the other option, just slam Tyrion. I think that play was fine because he went for the muster, which we didn't think he'd do, because holding on to the weapon's normally better to trade with, but he's just decided to apply enough pressure, and if he draws into the other True Silver, then holding on to that charge is just sort of missed out on a card draw, effectively.
Now I think you do brawl again, and then fireworks and kill whatever is left. And you hope
Do you actually kill the Shredder first with the fireworks, then brawl?
That's 4 points of damage you can possibly avoid.
That's true.
But
I'm just thinking of worst case scenario, say the 2/5 surviving, and then like something decent coming out of the Shredder. Then do you just lose?
Yeah, you do. But if you attack Shredder now, you take 4 damage, you go to 8.
You might get Doomsayer though.
You can.
It's gonna go with the brawl first. So if the 2/5 survives, which it doesn't.
It doesn't. There is a 1/1, and the Shredder drops a 3/2, a tiny Knight of Evil that's going a tiny axe to the face. I want to make that card playable. I was actually.
That's your challenge for this season.
Yeah.
Make a deck, get to Legend at least with a deck with that card in it.
An aggro Warlock that discards cards. There is a Tyrion.
Yeah, and is there any actual reasonable answer to this Tyrion?
Yeah, we talk about how bad this matchup is, or rather analysts talk about it exactly, and you can see how bad it really is. Yeah.
He brawled twice, and he's still super behind.
Can you deal with Tyrion at all?
I guess you can just play Belcher to not instantly die.
If you play Belcher, you can armor up, you go to 9. Belcher is not really contested.
Belcher just makes you not 100% die, right? But that's his only real any other option. He does die, I think.
Yeah. All right. So a simple silence. Aldor Peacekeeper. That's not enough, but still, Faeli is in a great position here.
Yeah, he can completely clear the Belcher this turn, and even if you wanted to Tuskar Jouster and drop an Aldor, you have the second one, so you can just play it as a 3/3.
I'm just looking if there's any weird play with equality that allows Tyrion to go through, or maybe give you an Ashbringer, but I don't see that.
Yeah, because of the Divine Shield, there's no way to like get value from Tyrion's attack and then lock in Ashbringer and go after there for another attack on the same turn.
Well, Faeli knows that at least Brawl is out. No more Brawls coming.
There's definitely no more Brawls in the deck.
Is this the fishing tournament? No, Tuskar Jouster. It's an actual Gfinity tournament. Summer Masters.
He gains that +1 health, which is obviously vital to this game at the moment. I think dropping the Aldor's fine. You've gotten second one, you're so far ahead. Your opponent's on 9 health. Like,
yeah, just play the minions
so fine,
here.
yeah.
Especially because the Brawl is out, so we know that another passable AoE might be Barngeddon. There is a Grom pickup, but nowhere near to use it. So is there... well, he can execute Tyrion, but then he's still dead.
Yeah, he gives him a 5 attack weapon, which is, with what else is left on board, too much.
Yeah, that would be 13 points of damage.
I think Alexstrasza would have just about kept him alive with that 2 armor. But that was his only way of surviving, never mind even winning the game.
If he plays the Shield Maiden, he goes up to... he'll get 7. He has 9, so 16 points of health.
So
there's 15 on board. Yeah, 1 off. So he can survive the Shield Maiden armor up. But that's not great.
No, well the problem is, yes, you survive, but how do you ever win this game? You just don't at this point. I mean, I don't even know what it could draw. Like, on top of this, like, even if you went straight into Alexstrasza, you still have to deal with all the board, and both Brawls are gone.
Oh, even a Harrison to just destroy that weapon. So again, like, is there...
so what he's weighing up is he can take him to 1, right?
Yeah, just attacking
well,
everything.
If he takes him to 1, then he gets Alex. Does it even matter to him, actually? So how much do you value trading with the 5/5? I suppose that's the... and not taking the warrior down.
No, I think you just go face with everything. The 5/5 doesn't matter. There is no warrior warrior flame that's going to...
Yeah. And if he plays Alexstrasza, there's no... I mean, Alexstrasza in Execute would lose 1 damage, but he still has 13. Yeah, he still has enough damage on board anyway.
Yeah, the thing is, like, you spend no resources to just go to face with everything.
Yeah.
You have casted no spells. You use nothing. You just do the same thing next turn, and the 5/5 does not even contest the taunt you have. So last turn for Sychry. Can he get the 3rd Brawl? And then follow with Harrison Jones?
Yeah. Some magical 3rd Brawl into Harrison Jones. That would be crazy. Okay,
so now a hard decision to concede. And he concedes. So Faeli is going to take game number 1 from Sychry. The mid-range Paladin, a really good deck versus Warriors. So if you guys have any problems with Contra Warriors on ladder, definitely play that mid-range.
Yeah, and I think that just as the guys on the desk said, the decks just matched up so badly for Sychry, and to get that matchup in the first matchup of the a best of 5 with 3 decks each is pretty good for Faeli. I mean, that's exactly what you want to see. It's just and we saw the game then. There was a chance that Sychry could have took it because it's Hearthstone, right? But it was so heavily favored, and there was just not even a point in that game where there was any realistic comeback mechanic for Sychry there to actually do anything with the hand he had.
Well, he was drawing a lot, but he was never able to stabilize with minions. He was always reactive.
Exactly. I mean, when he got forced to double brawl and he couldn't get the Shield Maiden down, then like you're playing against, you can clear the board a bit, but he never actually fully cleared it, I don't think. but then you're not playing any minions. Then they just build it up again. Then you have to answer it again, and he just got stuck in that cycle and couldn't get any power on the board himself.
Also, what's interesting is that before the matchup was bad, but now we also have the Murloc Knight, which makes the matchup a bit better for Paladin.
Yeah.
Just creating more minions that are hard to deal with.
Yeah, and it's also the combination of obviously on turn 6, depending on what your hand looks like, but the Murloc Knight's powerful because as Paladin, you actually do want a hero power every single opportunity, because why wouldn't you? It's not where like Shaman, where your hero power can sometimes not do anything if you keep spamming it because you don't have the totems to actually do it, or you have too many totems, sorry. Or like other decks like Warlock, where sometimes you just can't afford to tap. With Paladin, if you have the mana, you do want to press it, and the Murloc Knight just makes that so much better.
So what do you think we're going to see next? Is Druid a natural choice?
For Faeli, yeah, I think falling back on Patron's really good. I think if he can take the win with his Druid next and then locking in Patron potentially 3 times is fine, just because Patron's so strong.
All right, that makes sense. So we might see a situation where Patron is the last deck to be picked.
Do you think Sychry's going to keep the Control Warrior?
Well, he has to win with it, right?
Yeah.
And he was able to test the deck a bit right now in the situation. So maybe, possibly, he got the worst matchup out.
Yeah,
but both guys are actually changing.
Yeah, I was going to say, we've actually just seen the decks and we're just like wrong about that. So it's going to be a Druid mirror, which is pretty much just comes down to who can ramp first, right?
No,
in a generalization,
yes, but there's more to the matchup. I think the matchup is really interesting because if both players have bad hands, that might be the most interesting moment when they have to struggle and find a way to deal with their opponents. But if one player has an amazing hand and the other has a really bad one, well, that might be one-sided.
Yeah.
But you can say that about most of the matchups.
Yeah, that's true. I think it always feels worse against Druid because they actually ramp and like they can do bigger things earlier than you can, and it just feels bad. But yeah, with the mirror again, are we going to see the Dance Aspirants maybe make a big impact? I'm not 100% sure on if both players are playing it, if one is, one isn't. So that'll be really interesting. It's something that I think needs a lot more investigation in Druid as to, do you play 2 of each of the Dance Aspirant or Wild Growth, or do you play two, 1? You know, like there's a lot to mess around with, I think.
Do you play them at all? So yeah, we are excited to see some new TGD cards, and game number 2 is going to start. Druid versus Druid, check player versus check player.
Sychry's actually got an Innovate, which is always nice to keep hold of at the start. Again, it can sort of propel you forward a little bit in the matchup. But there are times when you can have, like, if you draw double Innovate, then not a lot. You know, you can actually burn all your hand and then have to just rely on top decks or just hero power for the next 4 turns.
Or Force of Nature.
Exactly, yeah. So it can actually be a bit of a problem. And we see Faeli's deck is the anti-weapon or anti-patron deck to a certain extent with the Ooze. I think he plays Harrison and the Mind Control.
I just love Mind Control tech. In the situation where your opponent has 1 minion on board and he plays Dr. Boom, you can actually steal something great.
Yep, and this is really, again, like we can see that Sychry's drawn all of the ramp that he could want with double Wild Growth, but Harrison is a bit, maybe Harrison early enough is decent into Sylvanas, but there's no really like big impactful minions that you can get out really quickly.
You can say the same about the Ooze though. The cards, they basically will do nothing. They are blanks, but they are bodies, and I'm definitely preferring a 5/4 than a 3/2.
Yep. Would you weigh up innovating out Shredder here? Because then you can follow up with Mind Control Tech next turn.
I'll probably keep Mind Control Tech as a return card, like a card that is going to help me when there's too many minions on board.
Yeah, my only worry would be is because Sychry will know this deck that he's against, will he just play around it? Because Druid can quite easily control the board with only 3 minions.
I still like that because if I play Mind Control Tech, he knows that Mind Control Tech is out.
He doesn't have to play around with it, right?
Yeah, and as long as he plays around it, I'm taking less damage because he always has only 3 minions on board.
Yeah, that's fair. So just play the Ooze, Tempo Ooze.
Tempo Ooze is good, and now Thorison for Sychry is something he has to consider. Do you innervate and play Thorison here? Especially because nothing contests him on board. Ooze and Hero Power is only 4 damage, so it will force Faeli to make a move instead of playing something good.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think the only slight frustration with it is I suppose it makes Sylvanas playable the turn after,
Yeah.
which is pretty nice actually. But like when you look at that hand, it doesn't look like a good Emperor hand. But I think just like you said, getting the 5/5 out that contests the board and demands a spell from your opponent to deal with, or something, maybe a charge, is really strong. And then being able to go Thorison into Sylvanas, and then yeah, you can drop Harrison later if you need to, if you dead draw a little bit.
And Druid matchup is mostly about tempo. Whoever gets the advantage and is the one pressing and being ahead, playing the big minions, is going to take the game. If Faeli is in a situation where he has to always react and spend the cards to kill what's on board, he's going to consistently take damage and just lose the game.
Yeah, and you're never going to be able to push your opponent into that, say, the combo range of health, whereas your opponent will, because you're reacting to them. And normally, Druid finds it a little bit hard to constantly react because it just becomes like super inefficient. So I can see the Wrath come out, and they use no doubt ran in. And again, being able to just drop Sylvanas now, it's pretty. Or he can shred a Wild Growth if you want to ramp. He just doesn't have much to ramp into.
Yeah, I think at this point you just keep the Wild Growth for turn 10. You're going to have 6 mana next turn, so only if you draw an Ancient of Lore, but you still have the place, you still have the minions you can actually drop in here. I'm not sure about Sylvanas though. Not enough value, and Sylvanas can be... There's actually not that much that you can do to Sylvanas on turn 4 as Druid. If you swipe, that's not enough. You'll have to innervate a hero power. You have just seen Wrath as Sychry. So
I think the thing about Sylvanas as well, if there was a swipe innervate hero power to clear, you just soaked up the whole turn, and also like a lot of valuable cards just to take care of a minion you actually played a turn early that it's normally dropped anyway. I kind of like it. And then if your opponent doesn't have that exact answer almost, then they're going to have to play a minion, and then you can start, Sylvanas becomes a bit more awkward to play around.
Yeah, absolutely. Faeli will be in trouble, but there is a Thorison, and Thorison is a great answer to Sylvanas because Thorison has to be killed.
Yep.
And you don't lose anything. But absolutely Sylvanas stops the Pilot Shredder from being played. There is a possible swipe innervate hero power, or maybe innervate Force of Nature, so a lot of ways to deal with it, but I love Thorison.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is the most solid play. Everything else just feels like you're burning too much to deal with it, whereas this, you've got to be pretty confident with your opponent with only 3 cards in hand that they will trade the Sylvanas into the Emperor.
Emperor has Super Taunt.
Yeah, you cannot not kill it. Or you can, and then you just lose.
You can silence it, maybe.
Yeah.
So a second innervate, which means that Sychry will be able to play both Harrison and Pilot Shredder, but he's running out of cards. If he goes for that play, and I think that's actually a correct play, attack into Thorison, play your Harrison Jones and the Shredder after innervate, then you're just sitting on this one Wild Growth, and you pray for Ancient of Lore.
Yeah, it's really awkward because he's drawn so much of his ramp and not drawn any of the minions that cycle, like mainly the Ancient of Lore, maybe an Ezio Drake, just to put, keep the card draw coming. Then you do get in situations like this where you almost have to just commit to the board, and that's it, and go for it.
Oh,
okay.
Because he has no cards in hand, he chooses to be super aggressive here and goes for phase.
Do you think that's too ballsy?
He
would have still had a 4/3 that with the Death Rattle summon the minion and a 5/4 to deal with, which isn't easy to deal with for a Druid. But now your opponent suddenly has yet another turn of Emperor, which is so scary because his hand is pretty big.
Not necessarily, because Sychry is so aggressive that if Faeli wants to play any minion, he needs to trade his Thorison into Sylvanas first, which means that Sychry just was able to deal that extra 5 damage without drawback. It's obviously we'll see what happens. Is there anything that Faeli can do to not attack with the Thorison into Sylvanas?
There's potential that it's a really tough one actually, because now Sychry's got like the initiative on the aggressive stance, but there's a chance that Faeli might actually just ignore it and do the same back, and he could have just dropped his own minions like the Shredder, or maybe like Shredder and then swipe the Harrison. Would you have had enough mana?
I don't think you can do it when Sylvanas.
Oh, you only had
board.
coin, not innovate, right?
No, I mean like even if he had mana, you just don't do it into Sylvanas, because then Sylvanas just attacks into Thorison next turn and you lose the Shredder.
It, yeah. And Wrath probably isn't what he wanted to see. He can draw with it, I guess, but
this is really bad. The Sylvanas is just Actually, what's bad on this board is Harrison, because Harrison has 5 attack and is going to kill. Sylvanas is going to attack into it. So
he probably wanted like a Druid of the Claw there or something to make it just a bit more awkward for Sylvanas to actually kill itself.
He needs Keeper of the Grove right now to silence the Sylvanas. Oh, Savage Roar, he can actually deal 6 damage with it. And this means this turn, that's 16.
Yeah, it's whether you commit to it. I mean, he's still got quite a while for that Wild Growth to kick in as a draw card as well. So, you know, it's not like it's like, oh, well, next turn maybe I can draw into combo or something, push damage now, but this is really awkward.
Yeah, I think he can keep the Savage Roar and just try to get Faeli to 14. He is
he's
really
got like
close,
2 turns to top deck.
but he's just losing the Shredder now. There is a silence, which is not needed. You just attack with the Sylvanas into Harrison Jones, you get the Shredder, and then you play your own Shredder, and you might actually go with the Mind Control deck as well. So you set up a board, and you're still at 15, so you're not killable yet. And the combo is not even coming next turn. You have 2 turns at least to heal yourself, or just keep yourself at 15.
Yeah, it's pretty reasonable. He does just clear the Shredder, and why not? And like you said, it looks like he's about to drop the Mind Control.
Yeah, you have to be aggressive now.
Yeah.
This is the moment where the game turns around, and Sychry still has a slight chance to take it, but it's really unlikely. A swipe is exactly what he needed this turn. He just needs to deal a bit more damage and hope to get the Force of Nature.
Yep. And again, though, he's still got a little bit of a while to wait for that Wild Growth to actually cycle, so that could delay him a little bit. And that's just been sat in his hand since the start of the game, more or less.
Almost.
It's like turn 3 or something.
Yeah.
So that's never good. And again, not even dropping a minion. The swipe is good, like you say, because you can push the Druid into that danger zone of being able to just be comboed down. And the Druid doesn't really have, other than Ancient of Law, a good way to try and push themselves out of that. Unless maybe a Taunt or Ancient of Law really is the only answer.
So you have a couple of options here. Because you're in such a bad shape that you have to assume you're going to top deck that Force of Nature at some point. You might swipe face to just deal the maximum damage and then Hero Power face, but you might also think about swiping the free to deal with 1 minion, and you still put your opponent in the range where you can top deck Force of Nature and win. What you can also consider, which I would not like, is swiping one of the Shredders. And what it does, it does that it's possible that a taunt is going to show up, and you don't absolutely want the taunts. And there's a lot of taunts. Well, a lot of taunts. There's Frostwolf Grunts, there's Anoyatron,
Unstable Goal,
and Unstable Goal.
Yeah.
So you don't want to give your opponent this possibility.
Yeah, and that Druid of the Claw might end this game actually.
Sychry is really upset about that. Is he going to get 1 more turn maybe if he gets the silence now?
Yeah, he would probably need to like either. Yeah, he needs to draw silence now and then combo next turn.
Ancient of Law is pretty good, but now Sychry is on a timer. There's 12 damage. No combo next turn yet. But there's plus 10. 22.
Yeah, so he's just short of lethal there actually. With the Force of Nature and the swipe. Does Innovate change anything?
That's 23. So because he hero powered, he's actually out of range. So Faeli, 1 damage off lethal, if I counted it correctly. 12 damage on board, and swipe and force is 10. That's 22. Innovate hero power, and that's 23.
That's close.
Well, 1 damage is the closest.
I'm just starting working out whether he was going to actually trade here or not.
If he is going to trade, he needs to count the damage as well. If there is a combo, how much damage is that, and is that lethal? And that will absolutely be lethal.
So this is fine. I mean, he's got rid of the minion, so again, he's not going to die next turn. I just don't think it's possible. And there's so many minions on board that he's just guaranteeing his lethal next turn, I think, anyway. So
there is 1 chance, though. And the chance is called Doomsayer. And Sychry has a way to activate a possible Doomsayer. That's what he has to do. He's dead on board. Doomsayer, boys.
This is always risky when you're relying to survive on a Doomsayer drop from a Shredder. Although it happens more than you'd like.
It happened to me, I think, around 5 times.
Really?
Yeah. 4 times I won.
In your
because
favor
of that.
or against? Okay.
4 times my favor, 1 time against. I had this
That's
perfect
pretty nice.
board versus
It's
warrior.
pretty good stats for that.
Yeah, it is. Always lucky. What can I do?
So Sychry's just taking his time, trying to work out what he actually wants to do and if there's any way to really survive. But
He can still draw the card.
Yeah.
That's a correct thing to
what
do.
could he draw?
Not really anything, I feel.
An Ancient of War, if he plays it, maybe?
With Ancient of War, isn't he... Okay, with Ancient of War, he was not dead on board. Well, with this, the game is over. He wasn't dead on board because there was 9 damage incoming, so he takes the gamble, but that will be it. Faeli just casts Force of Nature, and he takes another game from Sychry, dealing with the Druid of the Claw, going for phase with the minions. GG.
Yeah, and again, we saw a situation where Sychry's hand looked amazing at the early game, but the fact that he didn't actually then continue to draw into the good cards that he wanted, he just sort of burnt out of things to actually do. And when he had to just commit everything on the board and then top deck, normally Druid's really happy at top decking, but not when you're against a Druid who has a bigger hand than you and is also drawing cards. So went a really rough state there, and Sychry's probably going to be a little bit upset.
I really
with
like the play that he did, because we were talking about Doomsayer being the only play, but that was the only play knowing the hand of the opponent.
Yeah.
He didn't know the Force of Nature is there, so he had to gamble that with the play he did, just silence, prepare for the Savage Roar next turn. There was 9 damage only with the minions and the taunt. So if Faeli has nothing in hand, he just draws a blank, which is, I don't know, Shade of Naxxramas, and in his hand there's maybe a Y Growth that draws him another Shade of Naxxramas, then Sychry is in a good situation. He has a chance to win, but, well, unfortunately for him, the Force was there.
Yeah, and that's all you can do. You just put yourself in the position where, knowing what you know, this is how I win, you do it, and if your opponent has the lethal, they have it, and that's just the way the game goes.
Something like Subtle mentioned this before. The kill command, there was no way to deal with the kill command in the 100 matchup, so kill command doesn't exist.
Yeah.
For Sychry, Force of Nature didn't exist.
Yeah, because it just doesn't matter if he has it. It's game anyway, so you just have to play presuming they've not got it, and if they do, it's game. So that's
really good.
And Faeli's got his Patron left.
Yeah, so again, the situation where Patron is the last deck, and he just needs to win 1 game with it out of 3. He has 3 chances.
Yeah, and he has Paladin, Control Warrior, and Druid to play the Patron against, so probably pretty confident, especially versus the Paladin.
Druid as well, I think.
Yeah.
Even though the stats are against
I was going to say, don't tell that to Monk.
Yeah.
The stats do not say that whatsoever.
Well, I was talking with Monk yesterday, and we talked about this matchup, and it seemed like it's a bit shady because of the Shade of Naxxramas.
Of course.
Yeah. In the end, the stats are correct. So the match is really weird, and overall, more Druids actually win versus Patron, but it feels like there is a great Patron player. He can push through, and it's not unwinnable.
Yeah, we did see Matt. I think we saw is one of the guys who struggled with a few Patron players yesterday. So again, on one side, you could look at it and think, oh, he might make a few misplays today. But on the other side, if you've done that one day and in the evening you're like, I know what I did, that will not happen again. And the level that these guys are playing at, you've got to say it's like they've learned from mistakes.
Yeah, they're great.
Improve on the straight away in the next day.
They just grow playing here, and they get that experience. They get more comfortable in those chairs and in the buffs as well. The matchup we're going to see is Warrior versus Warrior, which is, from my end, I feel that's the worst matchup that Patron could get. But on the other hand, can you really counter Patron?
Yeah, I think what Sychry's done here is something that me and sort of discussed for the last game is something that you pick when you're behind by 2. You pick the deck that will just get you a win to just sort of maybe mentally help or just get some momentum and maybe stutter your opponent a little bit, because suddenly like, oh, 2-0, it's gone pretty well. One more game, fine. And then like they lose one and then they might lose another one. And then, it sort of flips in your favor and you get the momentum. But I like you just play the deck that's got the best chance and just at least take a game if you can.
I absolutely agree. I think that from the general perspective, it doesn't matter what you play because you have to win with everything. But only Machine can do that.
Yeah, exactly. When
we have emotions.
It doesn't matter how much of a sort of chilled player you even think you are or you actually are. There's still these things do come into your mind and they will affect how you actually play.
Absolutely. All right. So let's see if Faeli is going to take game number 3 or if Sychry is going to fight back with his Control Warrior. That's the deck. That's the weak link in his lineup, but he might have a chance against Patron.
Yeah, we see there the bash again and a brawl. Do you think keeping hold of a brawl's right here?
Yeah, I think you do keep the brawl because what Patron wants to do, Patron wants to play the Patrons on 5 if possible. So Death Spite, Patron, in a Rage, or maybe on 6 with Whirlwind. And if you don't have the brawl at that point, if when Patron explodes, you just lose.
Yeah, if that's not the case, then you need like execute, axe, and then it still leaves a Patron on the board.
The funny thing though is, if you do have the brawl, Patron doesn't really care. It's like Patron explodes on 5 and gets those Patrons, and if there is no answer, he wins. If there is an answer, he just spent, well, 2.5 card.
Yeah.
It's like, let's continue playing.
Yeah, and I still have more of those, so that's fine. Do you see the Grom in the opening hand, which is never nice? It's just, in a matchup where you're really reliant on being able to answer your opponent, having Grom just sat there, it sucks.
It seems again that Sychry has this really reactive hand. He has the weapons, which is great. He will be able to counter the early minions, but how is he going to follow up? Like, where are the minions that are the meat and body of the deck?
Yeah, or even like even an Acolyte, just to start cycling towards those the sort of beefier cards that he needs, and maybe probably the Belchers are going to be pretty important to him to get down, just because they kind of deal with Patron okay, unless you see like Inner Rage and then they trade with the token, which kind of is a bit of a problem, but it's probably as good as you're going to get.
On the other hand, Faeli's hand wasn't great. Now he got the Patron, so he has this Death Spite Patron turn open. If he gets Inner Rage, that might actually be pretty good. He still has two draws to do it. But what he wanted were the draw cards. Acolyte of Pain, Slam, Numbers Inventor.
Yeah, it's sort of got, other than like the Shield Slam, it's sort of missing the cards you normally want early game, because the whole point of the deck is to cycle to your win condition. I suppose on the flip side, he sort of has a win condition in his hand already, so does he care as much? But I'd be surprised if he doesn't just go for the Death Spite. Probably because he can't guarantee the extra Patrons from an Inner Rage, maybe he holds off, which is fine. And I think Sychry is playing Harrison in his Control Warrior.
Yeah, I would say so as well.
So being able to just burn off one of the weapons is always nice. But then also gives a nod to your opponent that Harrison then, okay, well, your second Death Spite's safe.
I absolutely agree on Shield Block. You want to draw more cards. You have no card draw. You on the bigger hand, you maybe want the Taurison as well. If you just play Death Spite, you're forced to attack. It doesn't do anything. It deals with armor. But if there is, as you said, Harrison Jones, you'll be really sorry, and that's your only Death Spite hand for now.
Yeah, and even if you played, say, like the Patron on without the Inner Rage, 2 Patrons are so much easier to deal with for a controller than the 4 that normally do come out. So that would have been a bit of a misstep.
So shield block. We're going to see. It seems like a standard warrior mirror, where you just stand in front of each other, just polishing weapons. Like, yeah, let's just armor up.
Yeah, it could be in for a bit of a long one, but it's going to get to the point where these guys are going to actually have full hands and have to play some like a minion probably.
And that might actually work for Faeli, because the more time Faeli has, he will be able to accumulate the combo cards. Even though his opening hand wasn't that great, if he is given the time, he's going to draw those draw cards. And playing minions, he has Armor Smith, and he should be fine with playing the small guys. Obviously, he doesn't want to hardcast Patron. Yeah. It's like, oh my god, my hand is full.
3-3.
3-3, deal with it.
Please don't kill it in one hit. The thing is, though, like, Sychry does have Bash, which is obviously pretty okay versus Patrons. He has 1 Execute, Death Spite, Fiery War Axe, and the Brawl. So on one hand, when Faeli wants to draw as many cards as possible and get to his combo, Sychry's going to draw more answers, but I think Faeli's going to win in the long run, because one combo from him, just Patrons, is going to demand so many answers from Sychry that, like, if that happens, it gets answered. And as you said earlier, okay, I'll just do it again to you next turn, probably,
The thing is also that the Throttings are there in the deck, so Patrons seem like a bit of a bait.
Yeah.
He can open with Patrons and get some board, and then Sychry has to deal with that, but then he has the Throttings full up.
Yeah. We're gonna go full rope.
Belcher is okay on this turn.
Yeah.
But what's your plan?
It's hard to want to drop Belcher on an empty board, because normally you want to drop it when Patrons are there. Because if Death Spite, and then you'll say maybe even an Inner Rage, or basically if the Belcher gets removed without soaking any Patrons, then that's a problem, because that's why Belcher's okay in this matchup.
Well, there is a shield slam, so this Belcher can be removed really easily. Is there anything else you want to spend your shield slam on?
I mean, the Control Warrior does run a lot of big minions. I think we saw Ragnaros as well and things like that. But I think by the time they come out in the game, unless the game really goes on for a long time, by the time those minions are going to start being a threat to the Patron Warrior, the Patron Warrior will just combo you and win. So I think being maybe liberal with that shield slam would be okay, but there's also nothing wrong with the weapon now. It's just going to be maybe a little bit weird. Maybe he has to whirlwind next turn because weaponing into a 3-1 with 4 attacks going to not be fantastic.
Do you have any advice for the Control Warrior on the win condition? Because Patron just wants to wait and then accumulate the combo cards, and at some point he's going to unleash the Patrons, or if there is enough minions he can just double Frothing for the win. But how is the Control Warrior going to win this? Is the way to just get enough armor so that Frothings can never go through?
Yeah, and I think you have to build up like a stupid amount of armor and also get to the point where you don't have to overcommit to the board because you're playing the Control Warrior. It's not normally a deck where you have a full board of minions, and that's the problem you have when you're against Patron. You sort of have to play things to be able to win it at some point because they can armor up as well. But as the Control Warrior, you don't have to overcommit by like 1 or 2 minions because you will just win eventually, especially with like Alexstrasza and then pushing into Grom for big damage. As long as you can reduce the impact of their big turns by just having more health, and like a card like Justicar True Heart's really good for that because you just out health them quicker because they're not going to play that card. But it is really difficult, and you do need a lot of experience. Even though Control Warrior is one of the decks that performs the best against Patron, it's still not an easy matchup by any means. Again, we've spoke a lot this weekend at how sheer powerful the Patron deck is against any matchup.
Alright, and we're going to see some Patrons.
And the fact that he already has a second one and the Whirlwind effect and the War Song and the Frothing in hand means, like you said, these could easily just be a bait, and if he loses them all, yeah, it kind of sucks. It'd be nice if they survived, but he does have a pretty strong follow-up.
Seems like a good brawl though. Brawl and then you kill whatever happens with the fireworks. You attack face first.
I mean, he could clear without using Brawl, I think.
But do you really want to keep the Brawl? You have double
It depends
brawl.
if you want to hold off the Brawl for the next wave, because I think because he's at 45 health and he's probably going to try and keep armoring up, he has a shield block in hand, you get to the point where the Frothings will need the patron player's patrons to actually build the Frothing up enough to do the big combo and kill. So he is going to go for the Fiery War Axe, the Bash, and the Execute with the Armor Smith into the 1-1 to just clear this board. And it might even say like, yeah, believe it or not, I haven't drawn one of my 2 brawls, but actually sat on 2, because then he can brawl and then he can brawl again. And this is one of the opportunities where the Warrior did have enough answers to deal with that initial Patron opening.
I also like the fact that he's emptying his hand. So now if Patron decides to wait and never play minions again, Control Warrior will be fine
in that game, yeah.
Yeah. It seems like there is a way for Control Warrior to just win the fatigue game as well. Just defend, get that armor as you mentioned, and always react to minions so that Frothing can never one-shot him.
Yeah, and with cards like Alexstrasza and the Shield Maidens, you can gain or make them lose more life. You know, in that fatigue matchups, they're pretty key. Just got to see Arm Smith in the Death Bite, so is he going to commit to another Patron board next turn? It's really difficult, because like I said, I think he needs the Patron board on the same turn he plays a Frothing to make the Frothing break through all the armor and actually maybe finish him in one go.
Yeah, versus Control Warrior, you have to have that.
But then he hasn't really got the hand for it. He needs probably one more Whirlwind effect or a second Frothing, or more importantly Emperor, to reduce the cards so he can do more stuff in the turn.
I think what I see from Faeli is just Acolyte of Pain next turn.
Yeah, that seems more reasonable.
And trying to get the Battle Rages.
Yeah, he just needs to draw more into like Emperor or something, or the second Frothing.
But what do you think about Sychry? Sychry just looking at one Armor Smith doesn't look threatening.
Yeah, I think he can just relax, to be honest. I mean, he's going to gain more armor. I think he's not at the point yet where he can't play shield block because he's playing a fatigue game. The game might not still go to fatigue. So playing the shield block's fine, just cycle, gain more and more health. It's kind of annoying he can't clean up the 1-4. That's probably a little bit frustrating because if he wanted to, he'd have to overwrite Death Bite onto it, which just sucks a little bit. But I think attacking's fine. You take the 1 damage, but also make the 1 health really easy to deal with, following up with maybe the Acolyte.
I love it. I absolutely love not playing the Death Spite because you have a second weapon in hand. And if you play Death Spite and kill Armor Smith, then you will have to wait. And you might not be able to attack at all if you have...
Yeah, it just gets really awkward.
Also, Death Spite, the next turn, let's say, if the patron's hit, he will be able to brawl and then use the Death Spite to kill one of the minions.
Exactly, yeah, because actually, it's really weird. Normally, the Death Spite's Whirlwind effect is like the most important aspect, but in this matchup, having the Death Spite just used as a 4-attack weapon is actually pretty key, because you don't want the Whirlwind effect on a patron board.
So now Faeli is trying to figure out his turn. Did you know that Faeli was a World of Warcraft player, the card game? We mentioned that a couple of times.
Oh yeah, I remember him saying.
He was one of the best Czech players when I played. They had a team of a couple of guys, and right now even he's playing with Stanislav Sivka.
Oh really? So he's going for the patron board without the frothing, and like again, I'll be the first to admit I'm not the best patron player in the world at all, but I just start to worry now that with 2 brawls still in his deck because he didn't use one earlier, like, can he win with just frothings now against a control warrior that doesn't really have to play any minions?
It will be tough, but he is 2-0 against Sychry, so he can take the risk.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, if he loses this game, yeah, okay, I'll just play versus your Paladin and probably have such a favored matchup.
But it's still possible that Sychry actually kills Patron 3 times in a row. We haven't...
It's definitely possible.
I've seen that happen to Life Coach.
Yeah, if it can happen to Life Coach, there you go. Pretty sure you just brawl and kill whatever's left here, right?
I still love how Sychry is just thinking about all those plays. Even though the board seems like brawl time.
Yeah.
And you think like, yes, this is brawl. He's just not brawling right now.
At the end of the day, you have a certain amount of time in your turn. Why play really quickly? Like you just slow down, take your time, and just look at every. Even if now he's sat saying, "I'm going to brawl. I'm definitely going to brawl, kill whatever's left. But what am I going to do next turn? What can he do next turn? What am I? How do I want to play in the next couple of turns? Because you've got the time. The rope's only just started burning, and he knows what he's going to do now.
All right, so the dwarf surviving. That's okay. Acolyte of Pain would grant another card, so he wants to deny that card to Faeli. Patrons are out. So whatever is left for Faeli, double War Song, Frauding. How many Whirlwinds effect have we seen?
We've seen the Death Bite effect.
And Whirlwind.
And a Whirlwind. I think that's it, because that's the first goal we've seen this game, right?
Yeah.
He probably plays 2.
He used one in a rage as well, right?
Has he?
He had 4 patrons for the first time. And then right now he had 4 patrons as well.
Yeah, so he must have used one, right? I think. So there's like the slam that would have been nicer probably much earlier on than we are at this point in the game. But I suppose like even Sychry's not really played that many minions to actually slam anyway.
I just realized this game is so funny because Sychry doesn't have to kill Faeli. He just has to protect himself so he never dies.
Yeah.
And if he never dies, he wins.
Yeah, it's just like, because again, like with the patrons gone, there's a huge part of your win condition. And again, like if he did that turn and Sychry was on 20 health, then like, yeah, you can actually just do something with double frothing and that's fine. But when he's like way above 30 and still climbing every single turn, and he has cards like Bash, we've not seen Shield Maidens yet, then like, there's some major trouble.
Do you go to fatigue your opponent and you inner rage the Acolyte and then you slam it in the rage? No, probably that's not a valid strategy. Faeli wants to draw.
Yeah, it depends how confident he is dealing enough damage, but every single turn he's not drawing, say, Emperor, is another turn where the warrior's putting himself on more and more and more health.
But even with Emperor, he doesn't have the Whirlwind effect, so, once...
We still has another Death Bite left, I think, and he has another Ghoul.
Yeah, but he doesn't have them in the hand. So, like, if he gets Emperor now, do you even play the Emperor?
Well, there's not much else he could do anyway. Oh, and we do see Justicar. I think this is the first time we've seen it from Sychry. I don't think we actually saw it last time he played Warrior. I'm not sure. But,
and as you mentioned, that's the perfect card versus Patron.
Yeah, I think that actually just closes out the game.
That's so much pressure. Well, that's something he can actually slam. But 4 armor every turn.
Yeah, so the effect is persistent for anyone that is watching and maybe doesn't realise. He gains 4 armor per turn from his hero power, and that will last regardless of whether the minion stays on the board. That is done now. His hero power is improved. And there he's sitting on 50 health. I mean, I've seen patrons burst for more than 50, definitely.
What's the maximum? Do you remember?
What, the maximum actually possible?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
All right.
I've seen a lot of damage. I think I've seen like maybe like 70, in and around 70. I don't know how high it can go though. I don't even really want to think about it.
Well, a couple more turns, and Sychry will have more than 70. So
yeah, that's true. And again, like those turns rely on I've seen rely on big boards because that's how you build up so much damage, or even your own patrons or something. But without patrons, it's going to be so much more difficult. As we see, he's not even bothered about the 6-1 now or clearing that up. He's just Fiery War Axe to the face to actually try and get him in some sort of reasonable health range.
Well, Faeli knows that every point of damage counts. So using Inner Rage on True Heart is throwing away 3 points of damage almost.
Yep.
Or even more. If you Inner Rage with 2 Throttings on board, it's actually 4 damage for 0 mana.
Again, you know, the 3 attack to the face to reduce armor by 3. Hero power alone gains 4. So
this is so crazy.
It's horrible to play against when you're in a position like this. You know you only have a certain amount of damage available to you realistically, and when your opponent is just pressing 2 mana button that gives you more armor than damage you're dealing to him.
And it doesn't seem so powerful when you face it. Like I faced this, I think a couple of times. I'm like, all right, he can armor up and gain 4 every turn. I can't deal with that. And after 3-4 turns, you just concede. There's no way you can deal as much damage.
A lot of decks just, especially because the way Control Warrior works, in the fact that so much of his deck is answers to and the removal, that like you will just burn your opponent out of good cards basically and just win the long game, which is what Control Warrior does.
It's almost like shield block every turn.
It's horrible. But good if you're the Control Warrior. I play Control Warrior with this card in it, so I'm happy when I see it.
Absolutely.
Again, the Gnomish Inventor quite late. There's the Emperor at last.
There's the Emperor.
And I think he just slams it with a hand this big.
You're forced to.
Yeah, I think you just have to do something. And then he almost has to then trade into 6-1 with his face.
The worst thing is that he only has 1 Wound effect in this unstable goal.
Yeah.
There is a couple of minions on board, which is good, but then yeah. No other way though. You have to Thorison and kill the 6-1. So Emperor empowered by Ragnaros, reducing the cost of the cards. It cannot reduce the cards to -1.
It's another Acolyte, a bit of a dead draw at this point. But again, like I just don't think Sychry really cares. I think he's just gonna deal with the Emperor. He could easily just shield slam it. There aren't many more shield slam targets left, especially when you have another brawl.
Yeah.
For like, if there's a big build up and
with the Throttings,
yeah, if Faeli decides to like,
yeah.
I'm gonna froth in, hit you hard, and then hope you can't clear and hit you hard again to win the game, you just brawl. And it's like,
and then
fine.
you win the game.
Yeah. So I think like shield slamming now, because you definitely like we saw a sort of I will leave Emperor up in the previous game because the trades are going to work out my way. But against Patron, you cannot leave the Emperor alive, because that's when he could win this game if you just make everything cost nothing, like crazy.
The big question is, what do you do?
Oh, shield slamming Sylvanas. Nice.
Oh, wow.
I like it a lot. Actually.
I love it.
Yeah.
That's a great play from Sychry. He's sealing Thorison, and he's going to hit how many cards? 9 cards he's hitting?
7, I think. Without the coin.
Without the coin, 7, yeah.
That's still really nice, though, because even, like, Grom, make it cheaper. Brawl, you can now, like, Brawl weapon and, like, bash if you want to and things like that. You know, you can, it opens up quite a lot, and both Frothings are down, the Unstable Ghoul's down with double Inner Rage and a slam.
He's
just going for it and hoping.
Yeah, he needs a Whirlwind here. But if he gets a Whirlwind, that might still not be enough. Execute. With this, the Throttings are getting that 6 minions, so +2, +4, and then the minion is going to die, so it's 5, 10. 14.
I told you before we cast, I'm not counting Patron lethal on stream.
That's 20 points of damage. 20 points of damage from just this.
Yeah.
And then with Inner Rage is +4. So that's 28, absolutely far from ideal. But he's clearing the board, and he hopes that, as you said, that's the build-up. That's the thing that Sychry was waiting for. Even if he brawls and one of those floating berserkers survives,
he just hits bash.
Yeah.
Done, yeah,
And the game is over because no more patrons. It's a massive amount of damage, but Sychry is almost unscathed.
Yeah, he just doesn't mind. He's still on 25 health, and he can deal with this board. And like you said, it's not as if, like, well, if the brawl happens and then you get the bad outcome, you're in trouble, or there might be a comeback. He can just deal with it all quite easily. And he now just Harrison, like, well, if you got weapon left, Harrison.
If you have any weapons in your deck.
Yeah, whatever. Harrison next.
Oh man, you know what the most crazy thing is? He can still armor up after all that.
That casual 2 mana 4 armor.
He can just gain 7 armor here, clear the board. So he's going to brawl, and it doesn't even matter what survives. I think that brawl is just insta concede for Faeli.
Yeah, he'll know his win conditions are gone. The deck's hyper is specific around like maybe 2 combos in 1 to 2 combos in certain matchups. But once you lose like all your minions that actually do anything in the game, yeah, there we go.
There we
the
go.
concede.
And Sychry takes the first game for him. That's game number 3. We have 2-1 for Faeli, and Sychry is fighting back. This patron is going to have 2 more chances.
Yeah, I like the fact that he took his control warrior against it. He's probably his best matchup out of his whole lineup. He played it as well as he could have played it. He played completely right, and Trueheart just sealed the deal. If I'm honest,
God.
I think Trueheart double brawl, and the fact that he could deal with that first patron turn without using brawl is huge. He had like easy answers, could play him on, didn't really lose too much for it anyway. But I'm sure the guys at the desk will be able to break all these patron down.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, they are going to nail that down. But if you guys have any problems with patrons on ladder and you want to play Control Warrior, absolutely play Trueheart. It's amazing versus patron.
Craft that legendary.
I heard it's actually not that great versus other decks. But versus patron being the best deck right now,
yeah, I mean,
great.
It works out okay in some of the against like the aggro lineups where you just teetering on like the rough moment where they might have lethal next turn, but if you can get it down remotely safely, you just win like that. So I think it's worth a spot. Even like you see some decks use cards in them that are tournament cards. Like is double brawl used on ladder? Probably not.
Not really.
But like for tournament play, it's different because you expect things like patrons.
So stay true and stay just, and we're going to throw the break right now. Stay with us. Hello everybody and welcome back to Gfinity Summer Masters 2. I'm Nimsh, I'm joined by Raven, and we're watching an amazing match where Sychry actually finally won with his Control Warrior. That was the weakest link of his lineup. Can he now take the series?
Yeah, it's completely possible. You've got to say that Faeli's favoured overall, being the fact that he's 2-1 up and he has Patron to play the rest of the games, and Patron does line up pretty well versus Paladin, and regardless of the stats, I think most people think Patron can do pretty well versus the Druid as well. But, you know, Sychry took the right step to maybe come back in this game. He took the strong deck against what he knew he was going to be playing against the Patron, and he played it really well. There was no other way to play that matchup, and he took the win. So really feeling okay, and just, you know, it was just a vital step in terms of if he'd locked in any other deck and just, you know, lost out, he probably would have been more disappointed than like taking at least one game.
Absolutely, and he also did that on the back of the True Silver Justicar True Heart, which is a new card from TGT, as well as the Murloc Knight, and some other cards we have seen. And not many players are using the new cards, but, well, Justicar won him the series. What do you think about the impact of the new cards on the current metagame?
Yeah, I think at the moment, especially with the BlizzCon season of gaining points at least sort of over, they'll see much more experimentation on like the ladder. But with cards like Justicar True Heart, it's a very safe pick. There's a few cards we've seen, like the Murloc Knight as well. The second anyone tries that card, they understand that it's actually it's just good. That is surprising. There's not a lot of opinion. The card's actually just pretty good. And same with Justicar True Heart. What it does, especially in a deck mainly Control Warrior, it does really well. And it's just and because it's a one-off, because it's a legendary, it's a pretty safe pick. You just play it and you know, it can win you games. Like
what about other decks? Like, I was trying it in Shaman, and I was under the impression that it actually buffs your totems, but it only allows you to choose a totem. So when I played it, I was like, all right, forever taunt.
Yeah, when I first read the card, because you didn't actually, before it had the explanations of how they exactly work, I thought you could pick a totem. Like, not out of the 4 of your hero power, you could just pick a totem out of, like, you know, the possible cards.
Yeah.
So, like, Manatide, for example, I thought that's going to be insane. Then quickly realised it would be overpowered.
Yeah.
But yeah, in the other classes, there's something to be said in Paladin as well. It can be played pretty well. I know, maybe not full Inspire Paladin, which is something I have actually tried. It's okay. But it can be pretty good, just generating 2 tokens. Again, it's something that Paladin does a lot. It's not a hero power that you decide not to play due to something like the Warlock tap, where your hand's full or you can't afford to because of your life. In the late game, you probably hero power in the turn.
It seems like it fits the control decks where you actually have enough time to lose some tempo when you play her on turn 6 or later.
And then the tempo you lose, you actually gain back, you know, as the game progresses.
Yeah.
Which is why in Hunter, it gives +1 to the Hunter hero power. And it's just not right for any Hunter deck that's played at the moment or really has been played in the past.
I really wanted to see True Heart in Druid, but unfortunately it's not that playable. But we're going to see Druid right now because that's what Sychry is going to queue against that Patron. And that's a confusing matchup where it feels it's good for Patron, but apparently Druid wins more.
Yeah, I mean, again, like looking at the stats, Druid has a higher win rate, and if Sychry's been listening to Monk over the past day or so, then maybe he overheard and was like, okay, I took my favorite deck against Patron. I'll take the second one, and then I'll just hope for a miracle with the Paladin lineup. But yeah, I mean, either deck would have been fine at this point. They're both going to be pretty rough, in my opinion.
All right, game number 4, Sychry versus Faeli, the Czech brothers. Both players from the same country, representing their pride. Druid versus Patron. Faeli just needs to win one more game with that Patron. Sychry needs to stay alive and then take the almost impossible matchup.
Yeah, so what do you think Sychry's actually mulliganing for at the start with Druid? Do you just
want
need
to
ramp? Yeah, just to
absolutely
get the bigger minions. I mean, Swamp Ooze is okay, I guess.
Yeah, Swamp Ooze is great. Hearthstone is great. If you don't get the ramp, and so as a Druid, you win when you Wild Growth, and then you play Druid of the Claw, maybe Shade of Naxxramas, and when Patron wants to explode with minions, he can, because you do have the minions to just kill the Patrons.
Yeah, we'll actually trade well.
Yeah. But another strategy is to play Weapon Removal and just hit the Death Spite on the key turn, which is turn 4, and maybe with Hearthstone snatch another Death Spite later in the game.
Yeah, yeah, because it's something that came in not too long ago with the in Druid especially, the complete anti-weapon tech of Ooze and Harrison, which is something that not a lot of players have done, you know, to like further back into the game, but with the power of Patron and even other classes when Oil Rogue was really popular, it's like teching a card in that's good against a lot of the most common classes is a good step to actually beating them on ladder especially.
Oh yeah. I really like the fact that Sychry didn't attack the face with the hero power.
Yeah.
You want to keep Patron Warrior on full health, especially because the early cards are cards like Armor Smith, like Shield Block. So right now, Faeli, he goes for Shield Block, and it means that Balrich is always going to draw one less card.
Yeah, it's definitely worthwhile, because what does that 1 damage actually change in the game? Probably not a lot in most anyway.
Absolutely. So what Faeli wants to draw is the combo pieces. He wants that Deathspite Patron in range on 5 if there is an opportunity on no minions. But if there is no opportunity for that, he wants to just draw almost whole deck, every card.
Yeah,
and
he just wants to draw into cycle to draw more. Like,
yeah,
that's all he wants. And the,
continue
the Upline's pretty okay, and even the Whirlwind, the Slam, pretty nice. You can do some work with that.
For Sychry here, well, he is expecting a Deathspite next turn, because it always happens, and he doesn't want to give the target, really. So if he attacks with the Shade, he is going to lose the Shade. I would absolutely keep the Shade hidden here. He can swipe in theory.
Yeah, I think the idea there was, does he Wrath Hero Power or swipe? Because Wrath can just straight up remove a patron, and sometimes swipe against patrons just makes you lose faster.
Most of the time.
Yeah, so it's like, what does he value higher there? But he did decide to go with the Wrath. But I agree, like revealing the Shade just wouldn't have been great, because it gets to the point as well where patron can't actually kill the Shade, other than if they run Brawl maybe. But I don't think we've seen any patron players in the past day or so run Brawl in the deck.
No Brawls there. I'm not sure if the Wrath was the best play there, because as you mentioned, Wrath is really good versus Patron, and he has double swipe being useless most of the time. But he definitely has some strategy in mind, and we're going to see how it unfolds. Here just Keeper is amazing, just to silence Acolyte of Pain and deny the draw. He might be disappointed by the lack of Deathspite.
Yeah, the thing about the Keeper, yeah, especially with Harrison and Ooze in hand. But the thing about the Keeper as well is you either need to play it soon, because it's only a 2 attack, it means patrons can just generate off it, or you need to just wait till really late game and use it to maybe just pick off a patron that's on 2 health or something like that.
Sychry, there is no minion there. Where are you targeting?
Trying to target something in the history chain somehow.
Silence the shapeshift. But yeah, silence is the correct play here, absolutely. And then, do you attack the Shade? No, because there is a Deathspite. There might be a reasoning, though, if you want to beta Deathspite. But you already have a minion. That is a good Deathspite target.
Yeah, and I think as well, because the Shade can't really be removed at this point, if you draw into combo, by the time you can combo, the Shade is so powerful that you can actually just punch through the armor.
So trying to deny the draws, keeping Faeli on good health. Healthy Warrior is never happy, which is a bit weird.
Yeah, I think we might actually see the Deathspite or the Gnomish Inventor now, because I don't think Coin Emperor looks nice, but what are you actually reducing that you want reduced for, say, a combo turn? Double Whirlwind reduce is amazing, because Whirlwind for no mana is great, but that's pretty much it that you're going to get from Emperor.
Well, I'll probably go with Gnomish Inventor as well, to draw more cards. Maybe even Slam.
What now?
I think Gnomish is fine. It puts another minion on the board, and at this point, I don't think the Warrior cares about his opponent's minions. He's gone with Emperor, though, so... The only worry is the Emperor's going to die next turn, which does reduce the damage, say, if he needs to use Shade, which is what he can see on the board. But he's reduced to 2 Whirlwinds and the Deathspite, but you really want to hit Patrons, Warsongs, or Frothins.
Here I think is a beautiful swipe and shapeshift.
Yeah. Because it guards your Shade, and again, the Shade's 5/5 now. In a few more turns, that's going to start looking really scary. And Patron isn't normally a deck that's played where you armor up a lot, because you're trying to cycle, so that's what, like, half to 3/4 of the deck is.
The best value that Faeli got from this Torison is that Sychry might be scared.
Yeah, maybe he's like, thinks, oh no, like I have to really play around stuff now because he's Emperor. When Emperor comes down, anything can happen afterwards. Like, you know, all your standard ideas of what can possibly be played sort of just disappear. That's what makes the card so interesting.
So if we go really far with the analysis of that play, can we go even farther beyond and try to see the reasoning for Thorison?
I don't know. The problem now is that Thorison's gone. It was cleaned up without losing the shade, which is important. And again, the reductions on the Whirlwind are huge because then you can just squeeze Whirlwinds into any turn you want. But he's not drawn any other minions yet. When he had Gnomish to maybe cycle into something more important, like
Patron.
I mean, to be fair, if he did it last turn, he would have Gnomished into the Inner Rage, but then he would have drawn the Patron. So maybe then you Emperor would say, well, at least I've got Patron that's reduced. There's one minion.
Well, now he got Death Spite and he got that Patron, so he will be able to actually spawn all those Patrons next turn.
Yeah.
So I think Death Spite is the play. Just kill the 2/3. And you're not even that concerned about the shade.
Yeah, at this point, because you can generate a board, then the Druid has to reply. The Druid can't just go, I'll hold off till I can combo, because it won't be enough, and the Patrons will just overtake the game.
There is Thorison for Sychry, but this is the weapon he was waiting for. This is his moment. Hearthstone Jones.
I think you almost have to use it, because if you don't, like you said, you've seen Emperor, so like his hand really could be like Patron, War Song, Frothing or something, and then although I don't think they could all be played on that turn, it's still, you know, it's still something you have to consider, that if you don't get rid of the weapon now, you're letting him use the weapon how he wants to use it.
I think it's not even that you have to use it, you're overjoyed to use it. Like, look at the happiness on Sychry's face. He is really focused on the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great for him that he got that first Death Spite with Horizon, and he still has this Ooze. So for Faeli, he might be thinking, okay, he had the Horizon, first Death Spite is out, I still have my Whirling Fangs, but in the future of the game, when I play my second Death Spite, he'll have nothing.
Relatively safe. The only positive there for Faeli is that he does have the 2/0 mana Whirlwinds and an Inner Rage, so he can effectively do the same turn, he just doesn't get the Death Spite attack. He doesn't have any...
Oh, look at that, that's a Death Spite.
Yeah, and even the Shield Slam actually on one of these minions could be really nice. Just to get rid of it, and yeah. If he slams, and then he's probably going to Patron Whirlwind and then Shield Slam the other guy, I guess.
Yeah.
Pretty strong. You can actually remove the board that was actually a bit scary, and without executes as well, so it's pretty nice.
And even though it seemed like Sychry has it in the bag because he was having those minions, he decided to attack, and this gave Faeli a perfect turn to get full board of Patrons almost.
Yeah, and this is now scary because there's just never a good way to deal with this many Patrons as Druid.
Well, he has Force. Is there any way to actually use the board to his advantage? And maybe attack one of the Patrons with the Shapeshift, so it's a free one. And then you spawn a Patron, and then you try to maybe swipe.
So there'll be 1, 2, 3. There'll be 4 3/3s on the board. So even if you swipe and it generates no more Patrons because the board's full, there's still going to be 3 Patrons left.
Yeah. So
and a warrior can do a lot with 3 Patrons, even with only 2 cards in hand. We can see that there's no Whirlwind effects now, but even just Death Spite, like how does, once the swipe's gone, like how does the Druid deal with it? 3 full health Patrons, it's going to be pretty scary.
Alright, I like it. He gives himself a bit more chances and plays a Thorison that has a Super Taunt. Right now there is, what, 15 points of damage, 19 with the Death Spite. That's not enough to kill Sychry. That was a really brave play. And I think that was the correct one because...
Yeah, I just don't think anything else... I mean, you can say that, well, Emperor does nothing because it's not like you have double combo to try and burst him down if he ignores Emperor. But with the Warrior being on 33 health, like I said, the swipe play is something you could do, but then how do you deal with three more Patrons? Like, it's almost impossible.
That was a play to win rather than play not to lose.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
But there is the battle rage for Faeli, and he's drawing a lot of cards.
That was the only redeeming point for Sychry. It was the fact that the warrior had like 2 cards in hand, which is normally really nice. But then when you just get like a semi-reasonable battle rage off, you're like, oh god, like, you know, the game's just getting progressively worse. And I think that just might be it. I don't think there's particularly any out here to deal with that many patrons through a ghoul as well.
If you swipe, what happens? You swipe the ghoul, and there is, well, that's why this.
And the fact that he even has 2 froth-ins, and we've not seen a war song yet. So again, you know, the odds on drawing a war song are getting progressively higher as the game goes on. There's still 4 damage from the Death Spite as well. Like, I don't.
But maybe there's still a way to like get 3 whirlwind effects and get all patrons to 1, and they die.
If he can do this, he's a god. I personally just cannot see it a single way.
Okay, so right now we have a lot of patrons on almost 1 health.
But he can only ever kill... Now, he can only ever kill 3. Oh, he's going to go for the whirlwind.
And he's going to summon 3 more. So it's still 6 patrons.
Yeah, and because the patrons spawn on full health, like the
oh
force
wait,
of nature. This is
actually
really
the board
good,
was the board was full.
The guy is a god. I said if he can deal with like this, well, fair enough. I'll take it all back.
That was so impressive. And right now with no war song, there isn't a stable
another
ghoul.
ghoul though.
Yeah, he will.
Can he do that again? I don't think so. Yeah.
That was still pretty impressive.
That was
from
impressive.
Sychry.
Yeah, that was really good play actually. And something that's really difficult is on a board that big with multiple whirlwind effects, you have to know how patrons work in terms of how they spawn and everything to be able to make sure that actually pulls off. But with the second ghoul,
yeah, he has the force, but now if he attacks into the ghoul, it's going to spawn 2 more patrons. Force will be able to take care of 2, but then again, 2 patrons, I can't do anything about them. He's not dead yet though. He still stays alive.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose to a certain extent, without Warsong, he doesn't die next turn if he just doesn't attack and doesn't proc the ghoul.
Alright, so Sychry again just trying to swarm the minion, the board with the minions. Get something to be able to trade. There's 7 points of damage coming. And that's +2, so that will be it. He has enough mana.
Even with Lotheb.
Yeah,
0
even
mana
with
cards are pretty okay to cast after turn 10.
So Faeli is going to enrage one of the patrons, attack for 5.
And Faeli's really happy there. He saw like double fist pump.
Faeli is going to the finals. And Sychry is eliminated. That was a really impressive match. Even though, you know, Sychry was able to almost clear it. And the stats are saying that Patron has a bad matchup versus Druid.
It's crazy.
I just don't believe it.
It is crazy. And I think like looking back at the whole set, Faeli's lineup was just much better versus Sychry. With the lineup he took with the Control Warrior, the Mid Paladin, the Druid, the Patron, and his own Mid Paladin just performed so much better versus the other 2 styles that Sychry took. It was always going to be an uphill climb, just in terms of the performance pace.
But Sychry was able to take that one honorable win with his Control Paladin, Control Warrior.
And even in the game against the Patron we just saw, he played really well. He played it pretty much as good as he could have. He was doing things I didn't quite see quick enough, and it's like, you can't really argue with that, but you know, everyone knows what Patron's like, so it can just win.
That might be the start of a great career, but here he finishes in this tournament, and Faeli is the man of the hour. Faeli is going to advance to face Hoy in the final of the tournament, and well, I can't wait for that one match, but we obviously have our analysts that will talk about it in just a moment. What was the highlight of this match for you?
I think actually just the very end, the way Sychry was actually able to just quickly identify how to keep himself alive versus a really awkward Patron board with multiple whirlwind effects, like that's really not easy. So that really impressed me.
For me, I think that was the use of the True Heart. He was able to win versus Patron with the True Heart. And I just want to hear what other guys have to say. So Callum, Monk, Lothar, what did you like?
Well, guys, thanks very much for that. As you know, with Lothar, sometimes it's what he didn't like rather than what he liked that we might start with. But yeah, of course, Faeli is going to be our second finalist, beating Sychry 3-1. We did say that Sychry had an uphill battle against that class lineup, and it was really proven out there with the Patron Warrior. But the Patron play of Faeli has been something that's been debated between us. We were debating it down there with the other pros and Soto as well. It seems like his Patron was maybe a weakness for him.
I think not a single player here in Gfinity, like for the past 2 editions, was playing correctly the deck. I would say that like the deck has a lot of options to choose from each single time, each single turn, and no one from the players I have seen at Gfinity yet for the past 2 editions, I would say that he played it really well. Like, the players have a lot of room to improve when it comes to this deck. It's really powerful, so it can be it forgives the mistakes for the players, but at the same time, you have to play it well to boost your win rate. And in the last game, we saw that you're saying that the Druid has a really good win rate against the patrons, right?
Yeah, by the stats, it's about 60% in favor of the Druid. And we even saw that Sychry, he kind of teched in additional cards that are supposed to help the matchup. A second weapon removal, the Ooze, for example.
Yeah, and that's like pushing it out, even for pushing it to like the maximum effort, right? And there was a situation when he attacked with the Shade of Nexramas, which was, in my opinion, the losing play. Because you want to have a security against the patron board. Like if he plays like a huge patron, you want to have something as a removal because the Druid has a problem with bodies, right? So if you don't have Wrath, if you don't have a swipe, or you use that because you had to use it beforehand, right? Then you need something to rely on your defenses, or just to kill him off with a huge combo, with like a 10-10 Shade with a plus 14 damage from hand. So that's like in general 26 damage, right? And when he used that Shade to kill a 2-3 and left his Shade on a 6-3 stats to die to an execute, a slam with Whirlwind, with Inner Rage, there were so many options. It felt so bad, in my opinion, that if you look at that game again and think about it, okay, you leave a 2-3 on board, which is not biggie, like for the Druid, it doesn't mean that's not tragedy, right? And you still have a 6-6 or 6-5 on board, which waits for the turn when the patrons hit. And he had an option to clear the patrons, just leave one up. Then he would use the Shade and kill all those patrons, so would still have a chance to actually do something.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's probably thinking of, he really wants to deny the Battle Rage, but then again, is it really worth it in this scenario?
It's not worth it when you have only 2 minions on board, because it's like just one card drawn when you have the you think about the patron turn. Like you can do nothing about the patron turn, and he will probably combo that with the Battle Rage. Yeah. So if you use the Battle Rage before the patron turn, that's even better for you, because you know there will be less value on the patron turn.
Speaking of Battle Rage, in the Warrior Mirror match, we did see 24 cards of the Patron deck and didn't see a single Battle Rage. Speaking to Faeli's manager, he thinks he doesn't play Battle Rage at all.
Well, that was one.
Yeah, we saw one in the last match at least. Yeah. But I think it's very likely that he only plays that one Battle Rage, and we have seen one Battle Rage in Patron decks before. I know Nyria at one point, he ran one Battle Rage and he got top 4 Legend.
But we'll all agree that it's probably bad, right?
It's probably not good.
When players do that, when top players do that, though, when they say, "Oh, he got to top 4 Legend with it," it's possible Nyria got to Legend in spite of that because Nyria is a world-class player.
Well, I just think like if you play a 1-card difference like in Battle Rage and you go to top Legend, it takes about 10 to 15 games. It's not enough of stats to actually base a deck on that. Like you say, okay, 1 Fear War Axe is enough, 1 Battle Rage is enough, because you have to play like 100 games. And if you want to be top 4 Legend after 100 games, your win rate should be around 75%. And I would say that you can't do that with just 1 Battle Rage. And
if you speak to a guy like Life Coach, obviously your teammate, he's very big on the statistics of taking out even single cards. You know, the sort of single point difference. You know, if you put in 1 more of a card, you know, you're probably going to draw that card 1 out of every 2 games, and then that improves your win rate by like 2 to 3% just from taking out that 1 card. You know, those can make a big difference to your overall win rate.
those
And we
are
saw that
huge
he didn't draw
differences.
any in the Control Warrior Mirror match, and if he'd had two, he might have been able to draw one.
To be honest, if you don't draw any Battle Rage in a Warrior Control match, you don't really think about it because you probably lost the match anyway. By the way, why didn't Sychry play the Brawl on the first Patron turn? I was like baffled by that.
Yeah, you would think that he runs 2 brawls, and it's again just for the patrons and against Patron Warrior first of all, and the brawls are specifically for the patrons.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It was kind of weird for me as well. We did see, however, that in the end he got to use both brawls, and he got to use the second brawl on a Frothing Berserker board.
Yeah, but
So I guess it kind of worked out in a sense.
but the execute is basically saying kill one Frothing Berserker.
Yeah.
Because it's always damaged. So it's like 1 mana, kill Frothing Berserker.
Yeah.
So and Brawl says kill all patrons apart from one. Like
Yeah.
leave one.
This argument is going to rage on here at the analyst desk, but we're going to go to a break now. It's going to be an extended 15-minute break while we set things up for the final. Of course, it's going to be Hoy versus Faeli. It's going to be an epic clash for the Gfinity Summer Masters 2 title. Go get something to drink, get something to eat, get yourself back here in 15 minutes' time. You're not going to want to miss this final.